Welcome to the DKM podcast. We're here at the Don't Know Much podcast. We don't know much about anything, but what we do know is this is
We did
episode
it, guys. We
69.
did it. We got the funny number. We did it. We got the funny fucking number.
One thing I've always loved about cultural changing and cultures adopting new things, new ideas, new slang, new everything. Earlier today, or yesterday, I saw a thing that says proper English. You alliterated this very well. Um, and then it says the simplified version of that is uh, that was hot or that was good or whatever, right? There was, and then the slang English of it is like bars, and I'm like, I like how we just find different ways to find what's the word, to change our culture, to change things to be more simple and funny at the same time. I mean, heck, even LOL is in the dictionary. The whole thing that came out at the beginning of of the 2010s, that cringy thing that some people would say now has become such a big social norm here in America that's in the Webster freaking dictionary. So 69, here we are. All is nice, all is good. We're still talking. You're just Daniel and I. Kenny's still dealing with what he's got to deal with, but we still love him. The one thing I will say though is, uh, I wonder where the whole 69 thing came from, because obviously people just started thinking about 69 because of the sexual aspect of it. But like, but what leads to that, you know? And then if we look up on the internet, it's like, oh, what led to 69 being so popular? It's probably going to be like a 50-minute documentary about like the dark tunnel, the dark iceberg of the 69
You're going too deep,
number
Marcos.
type of thing.
You're gonna find out Obama's last name at this rate.
Oh no. You think I'll get in
Yeah,
trouble if I
yeah.
find it out?
You'll be immediately be wiped from the face of the planet easily.
I think one of those things that I liked about internet's, like, just internet's documentaries is how some people can be very, very creative in their what's the word, in their way of producing content that obviously they're not getting straight to the point, because obviously that'd be a boring video. They make it entertaining and stuff, but like they throw in a lot of like little fun facts, little fun things that you didn't quite know about, and introduces you to a world where you're just like, oh, this is nice. A good example is, as of recording of this video, I think yesterday, a very popular YouTube channel called Something Salt released another speedrunning video. Who people who don't know who Something Salt is, he's a gentleman who covers the speedrunning community
Is
for
he the
video
guy who
games.
did that
And
video about like the guy who broke God of War speedrun? Because I think I might have seen that video.
maybe he seems to be focused more on Nintendo games and all that stuff. But it's not
Mhm.
exclusive to that. But Summoning Salt is someone that literally at the beginning of every one of his videos he uses like some sort of vaporwave song that has gotten popular mainly because of his YouTube channel. But he essentially just makes a documentary of like speedrunning and all that stuff, and it's mostly Nintendo, Sega type of things. Uh Things that we associate to like nostalgia content, to us, right? And he was talking about Double Dash in his previous video, and just the amount of stuff that he must study just to make you understand how much of a crazy feat bringing down a world record for a certain time trial by like a couple seconds is quite. He like The man knows how to direct. The man knows how to like write a script, because it does make you feel like you're sort of not part of it, of the speedrunning community, but the dude does a really good job at like, hey, this is what it took for this guy to
I'm
do
in the
this.
camp that believes that
And
if you could make the production so good that it keeps me entertained, the subject matter might not even be enough to like keep me interested enough. Like it's crazy how like you could go so deep into a rabbit hole, but the production is so good that it keeps you along for the ride as much as possible. Like a good example I used to watch a lot was back in the day was My Life in Gaming, which is a great YouTube channel. They do this whole like sub series where they talk about like how to get the best picture quality real old game consoles. Now, of course, I don't deal with the old game systems anymore because I more prefer emulation or re-releases if possible. But the way how their production is so good, I'll just be like, yeah, I'm gonna watch a video like how to get the best picture quality of a PS2. I don't have a PS2, but fuck it, I'm genuinely curious. Like, how do you do that with original hardware?
The at least with Summoning Soul, his if you're not really big into speedrunning, nor are you big into the some old school games that you used to play as a kid, but you don't really care about it now, and how people have pushed that game that you used to play a lot to its limits, more power to you. But one thing that at least he does well is the research is there. It's obviously there, but it's also a very, very good example on how to really perfect the craft, because at least the way he does it, the formula.
Yeah, I mean, look at his channel right now. It's
everything
actually
that
pretty
he
crazy. It's not even like a full page, and all his videos got like over 1 million views, except like his first three. But like starting on his like fourth video, he already has like 7 million views already, and then you can go up to it, and it's like all this history of it. It's really interesting. I actually might give this a shot because this looks very interesting to me.
It's videos that don't really age badly, because it tells you exactly what happens at the time of the recording. Like, oh, this is what happened, this is what's going on. He doesn't just say, hey, this is what happened in speedrunning today. This is more so an explanation of the history of speedrunning on this certain game. A good example is like, hey, he'll cover Mario Kart 64 video, right? He'll using a video to do Mario 64. Then he'll make another video covering it again. But the man doesn't make simple 10-minute videos. No, he goes 30 minutes plus.
Like almost close to an hour.
Right, and he can make every time he makes a video about a subject twice, there's always a lot to talk about. He really gives you one of those like internet history lesson types of things. It's always interesting how he does it. But at least like he's a good example, at least in my opinion, on like how to properly introduce an idea into something that obviously the market already wants to exist. Like the market's there already. Like we just need someone to like engage into that, and that's what people started.
Like, yeah, this is definitely something of a super niche subject matter, but clearly this person is super passionate enough and really good to keep the audience entertained. I'm legitimately curious about the watch time of his videos actually, and see like how many people actually start from beginning to end, because it's crazy out there. It's really crazy.
I think when it comes to watch times, I can't recall many videos where I just stop watching it halfway through, unless like I'm dealing with something else, like outside of the video itself. Like, oh, I get a phone call and then I forget about the YouTube video completely until like later that night, and I'll keep watching the YouTube video. But like I don't really stop watching a video halfway through.
My only gripe with that is if there's like an end screen that just kind of drags on a little bit. There's a lot of YouTubers that used to drag on the end screen, and you know what that is? It's like the end of the video happened. We're like, all right, thanks guys, see you next time. Fade black, fade back in, and slay. It's like, hey guys, I'm recording this at 4 a.m. and it's really late, if you guys are here 10 minutes yet? No, okay, let's keep this going a little bit. It's been, it's like kind of like, and I don't mind it too much if it's like a minute, maybe two. But and if like maybe you're saying something like, oh, this is where the parts or the Patreon credits start coming in, stuff like that. But there's just some people that just really twiddle their thumbs and I'm just like, hey man, like your video was 6 minutes long and 3 minutes of it is just the end slate. Like you gotta like cut that shit out. You know what I'm saying? Like I get it, you gotta hit that 10-minute mark, but this is just like really cutting into the time. You know what I'm saying?
One of the things that some people have done is the whole hey, thank you for watching my video to the end, and then they will give you like a small little synopsis, I guess, of like what they're thinking, or they tell you, hey, this is what I went through while making this video, and it's kind of cool. I'm glad for all those who support me. My Patreon, here's my Patreon, and they do the whole, a list of the patrons and all that stuff, and that's cool now. But like either way, like if I mostly consume different kind of content, and usually the content is more so like informative, and the ending of the video is just normally just like, hey, we're crossing our I's, dotting our T's here, and we're just going to finish up the video. We're bringing it all back together. That's usually when I stop watching a video because I'm like, I already went through the meat and potatoes. I don't have to be here for dessert to end it all. Like
I
I
wouldn't
don't
say
really
it's more
care
of a
for it.
dessert. I'd say
So
more like we're just waiting for the check to come in so we could get the fuck out of the restaurant. Like we're done. That's it. We had our meal.
basically,
Like,
yeah.
give us our check. Let's get the fuck out of here.
That's why I really don't really stick around throughout the entire video if that's the kind of video I'm watching. But for the most part, I watch towards the end because it's something that I do anyways. Like a lot of anime stuff that I watch it towards the end because it's usually like there's good content all throughout. Like I really recommend for those who have a lot of free time. I really recommend watching One Piece. One Piece is really good. Really, it's I don't. Maybe I could use it. It's peak fiction, especially now. I'm caught up with the manga, caught up with the anime, and it's pretty freaking good. But like, there's just so much to do when it comes to One Piece that I wouldn't blame you if you didn't want to. If you're not interested in spending 2 years watching 1,000 episodes. Which, fun fact, I think you can watch all of One Piece within like 2 months. Less than 2 months, actually.
I don't
Actually,
think I have
even
that kind
1
of
month.
commitment, though, honestly. But, I can't.
Uh, a previous coworker of mine, he would go. Let me see. He would work his typical hours from 7 to 3:30. He would go to the gym for about an hour or two. Right. Go home, shower, and then make food. And while he's making food and while he's doing everything, he's watching One Piece. And the dude, after doing all that, in a little over a month, he caught up. And I'm like,
I had a
Jesus.
coworker do the same thing to me. He's like, he goes, "Hey Daniel, I think I'm gonna give One Piece a shot." I'm like, "All right, man, it's a long show, got a lot." Just yeah, but I think I dig this shit. I dig the pirates, and I'm like, "All right, man, go ahead." He comes back the next day. "Hey, man, dude, I'm at 150 already. Like, how? What? How? What? How did you do that? How the fuck did you do that?" He's like, "Oh, I just watched it when I got home, and I watched it all the way till he started to come back to work." Dude, you didn't sleep? Nah, I was too busy.
Respect. I mean, I'm telling you that. Listen, there is quite, and I'm not being facetious on this. I'm telling you right now. There is a point in One Piece where I'm telling you, 200 episodes straight is just straight up fire. And
Okay,
just like, there's just so
that
much
brings up my
happening in
question.
the
Right?
narrative.
Let me get this. Let's get this out of the way now. I've been very vocal about this. Why I'm super hesitant when it comes to like any 3-digit plus episode of any anime. I just there's a thought that's always in the back of my head that just says, how much of the episodes is filler? How filler heavy would you say One Piece is compared to the big three, which is Dragon Ball, Bleach, maybe Naruto if you want to add that there.
Okay, so yeah. So Bleach and Naruto are very infamous for the fillers. The amount of fillers they had. Dragon Ball Z has had its fair share of fillers, but it's never been like very, very infamous on that case.
Most people don't remember
that's
the
why Dragon
filler.
Ball Z
That's the
Kai
thing.
exists. Or people confuse that they watch Dragon Ball Z and they don't think there's any fillers, and then they watch Dragon Ball Z Kai and they're like, "Oh, that was filler," or maybe they just grew up only watching Dragon Ball Z Kai and they had no fillers whatsoever.
It's just so crazy because like, as a kid, I remembered so much about Dragon Ball Z. I don't know if either it was Toonami or whoever was there, but I feel like there was so many episodes I don't remember. But it could be possible we just watched it as kids. But when you were kids, you're just excited to see a new Dragon Ball Z episode that you didn't really mind that it was
Basically.
filler. Like we saw the Frieza saga,
Basically,
and even
yeah.
that was still filler. It's like, oh, there's 5 minutes until the planet explodes. But how many times do they just stand around waiting for the next punch? And I'm just like, yeah, that's not right. It's like if you get into Power Rangers nowadays, like Power Rangers fans will come, left, right, and center to tell you that, like, oh, don't watch this episode to this episode. This has nothing to do with this and that. And I feel like that's what we need. It's like a good example is like I wanted to watch. I was thinking about like anime I wanted to watch back when I was a kid and I was in high school. I always wanted to get into Full Metal Alchemist, but there was Full Metal Alchemist and then there was Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. And as a new guy, I didn't know what was the difference. I thought Brotherhood was like a sequel or something. And then people told me like, no, it's actually more closer to the manga. It cuts out a little bit of the filler. It's more of like a easier entry point to get into the show at that point. Like, oh, okay, so I guess I'll give Brotherhood a watch. But then there's some people there say, like, no, you have to watch the original. It's the best one. And it's like, I don't know. How do I watch it then? How do I proceed?
Just Brotherhood. Just you're fine with just Brotherhood. When it comes to your question though with One Piece, like when it comes to filler and all that stuff, like even the fillers are good when it comes to like the big three, right? Bleach only ever had like I think 1 or 2 good arcs out of all their filler arcs that they had. Naruto, I would say, would had a couple as well that are good filler arcs, but like most of them were just like, what are
Hmm.
we doing here? It's mostly just for comedic relief and all that stuff. And but when it comes to One Piece, a lot of its filler is freaking, it's fire. It's pretty good. It's funny and it's surprisingly somewhat canon sometimes. And even the manga uh sometimes introduces it filler content into the manga itself. A good example is in recent events in the anime, Luffy visits or he gets thrown into prison, whereas in the manga he doesn't quite go into the prison to the same degree that he did in the anime. And in the anime, he learned a new technique in the prison. It's not a new technique; it's just a new form of already technique he knew. And in the manga, he never learned this. However, in the manga, he said he learned this technique, and it didn't screw up the continuity in any way. All it said was that he just learned it, and people just assumed that, rightly so, that the anime covered that something the manga didn't. Um, but it was still canon throughout, like for everything, right? So One Piece, as long as it may be, and as slow as it may feel like at the beginning, like a lot of these animes, as well as it's an anime that started in the what early 2000s, late
Hmm.
90s, something like that. It is slow, and some people don't like the animation style, which to each their own, of course. You do what you got to do. If you don't like it, you don't have to like it. That's fine. But the One Piece anime and One Piece manga are just so freaking good. Amazing world building, amazing character development, amazing just a lot of things. It's long and sure it drags out, but the creator is very OCD and very much of a perfectionist in that degree, where he's like trying to make sure everything's correct, everything's good. We're currently in the final saga as well in One Piece. Just the final saga of One Piece just started in the manga, and I'll tell you right now, it might take 5 years for it to finish because obviously it's a weekly thing. And all that being said, the it's he said he's going to type a lot of loose ends, a lot of like things that he's left out as a little Easter egg type of thing. He likes to leave the door open. Like let's just say on episode 200, right, of the anime, he says, "Oh, character W will do this thing." But we'll never find out what he actually did there until episode 800. Not because he planned it or he forgot and started using it. It's like no, it's more sort of like a plan thing. But he's like, I'll introduce it back again when I feel like it's more right. But he never leaves it open. And this is the final arc. This is the final saga, I guess, of the One Piece uh manga weekly releases. So it's ending in about a couple years, but it's gonna take some time. All in all, being said, One Piece is something that I would tell anyone like, hey, if you have a lot of time, you might as well just pick it up. You don't have to pick it up all right away. Just do it all in one sitting, like like how our coworkers did. But like just take it slow, take it gradual. Sip it little by little. But I recommend it.
Yeah,
I recommend it for
I don't
everyone.
know. For me, there's always a hard limit for me, and that's I think that's my problem with every anime. It's just like when the pacing, especially at the end of an arc, that's so good. Like a good example is like I got really into Bleach. I love the idea of it. I thought the Soul Reaver thing was so cool. The whole like you see, there's like the society built around it, and like you had all these like cool people with all these different abilities and shit. I was all over that.
Right.
I only got up to the part where, spoiler alert for anybody who's never watched Bleach, where Ichigo and his friends break into the Soul Society and they try to like rescue Rukia. That was great. That was like really cool because there's all this stealth and there's all this potential and all this power. And you still didn't know what everybody could do yet. But then after you see Rukia, everyone's just like, all right, we're all good friends now. And then it's just kind of like this slow moment where they're all just kind of like realizing the moment, like, okay, what's the next thing here? And there's like a lot of episodes I caught on Adult Swim back in the day where nothing really happened. Like I saw some of my favorite characters, but I'd just be like, okay, but nothing happened in this episode. I kind of feel like nothing really added anything to the episode or to the show in general. And that's just my thing, man. I as much as people don't like Kai because some of the censorship, and I blame that to Nickelodeon, I just chalk it up as that I think you need things like that. You need some point where you just need to say, okay, the story begins and ends like that. And listen, filler isn't only tied to just, 3-digit long episodes here, episode count shows here. I mean, like even Code Geass, one of my favorite animes of all time, mostly the first season. There's like one episode of like nothing really special happening, but there's still kind of a plot in the background still going on. It's just that's just my thing. It's more easier of a pill to swallow to be like, okay, maybe one episode is just kind of cutesy, maybe it's a little bit, hijinks and shit. You get some cute moments with the characters because by the end of the anime, everyone's gonna get fucked up at the end. But that's just one episode. But like going through like an arc or multiple episodes where nothing goes on, I kind of tap out. I'm like, hey, I'm done. I'm not interested. I'm not motivated. And people tell me just keep going at it. It's like, no, dude, just tell me what's the next episode I should watch, because I can't give a shit anymore. I can't. And that's one of the things about like with television. Like I used to be back in the day, which is really funny to me. We brought up earlier about like all these like long ass YouTube videos about people who make like like up to an hour long episodes of like the history of speedrunning and stuff. Back in the day, I remember when I wanted to watch Breaking Bad when it was done. That was like the first hurdle for me. It's like, oh my god, like an hour long episode. Like I can't watch a lot of episodes like that. But then once it gets you going, you start like wanting to watch more of it, and then another one you start telling yourself like, okay, I'm only gonna watch this episode, and then the episode ends on a cliffhanger. You're like, oh my god, how are they gonna follow up with that? And then you just keep going. Like that's what I'm going through with The Boys right now. Like you just don't realize like how fast your time is going when you're just watching like hour long episode back to back to back. And granted, anime is more usually about 30 to 40 minutes, but imagine like 30-40 minutes, but imagine like 3 hours of The Boys, but instead of like actual development, it's all filler. And it's just like that kind of like takes the winds out of my sails, if you know what I'm saying. So I don't know, maybe there could be some guide out there that could recommend me, say, all right, watch Bleach episode this, and then you can skip all of that. And I'm pretty sure there is. I just at the time wasn't motivated enough to do it, so I just never followed up with it. But that's something we'll have to cross that bridge in the end. But which is funny because I've been really watching any anime lately, not even just old or new. I just haven't been watching anime. I don't hate anime, I still like it, but just nothing has really caught my eye lately. I'm trying to think like.
Speaking about Bleach, though, the final arc is coming out, which I mostly read manga, which I could say right now this manga this final arc is like there's a lot happens, like a lot of big stuff happens. So I did want to comment on the thing you said about like, oh, we just finished rescuing Ruki or what now, right? Well, like this is the one thing some people don't like, or people don't, or just need to get used to when it comes to like any entertainment, any story, anything, right? Once the climax hits for a certain arc or a certain thing, sure, there is a like once it finishes and completely it's over, there is this downtime in between sagas, in between arcs. You won't get an immediate like we're gonna ramp it up to 100 again. We gotta build up again. Gotta start this whole process. That's the one thing that people are like, oh, I don't like what's happening now, even though it is still interesting in this series. I kind of like that when this person was still fighting, the protagonist was still fighting, this big boss. We're like, yeah, of course, you're at the climax. You're gonna have to wait till we get there for this new saga, this new arc, this new whatever. So
right,
it's gonna take
and there's
some
nothing
time,
wrong
but,
with that. I like that in
get
some
what you mean.
shows where like spoiler for Invincible. I don't know if you watched Invincible, Marcos. I'm kind of gonna spoil it here for a minute though, just giving everybody time to realize. Can I tell you the ending, or you don't want me to tell you about it?
I don't
Okay,
care for
so
spoilers.
anybody's listening to this right now, just cover your ears for like the next like 2 minutes. I'm gonna keep this as short as possible. All right, 3, 2, 1. Okay, at the final episode of Invincible, when everybody finds out what Omni-Man was up to and all this sort of shit, and just absolutely beats the shit out of Mark, there's like this long part of the finale where it's just like everyone's kind of like reeling everything in. That's just like, wow, this actually happened. We all had to deal with it. This is such a crazy revelation. All these people died and all that stuff. And that was like the end of the episode. There was no like big climactic fight or anything. It was just like one dude got his ass beat. Everybody's kind of in shock, and then the episode's just dealing with the recovery. But notice how that was just only like within the same episode, But with Bleach, I felt like it was like episode after episode after episode. I don't mind that. I like that where like, an anime or like, especially after like, that's one thing that I always liked about Code Geass or like other, mech anime shows. It was just like, there's an episode of moment where they reflect and saying like, yeah, at the end of the day, you're seeing cool robots fight each other, but there's a lot of people that get caught up in the crossfire that we kind of just forget about. Like that's something you notice about an Evangelion that you kind of don't realize on the first viewing. But as the fights keep going on and on, people are just kind of saying like, yo, fuck Tokyo 3. Like, what's the point? Like, yeah, the city is a fortress, but we keep getting fucked with angels and the Ava units are piloted by these kids that are fucking shit up. Like, we're just gonna leave, you know? All right, for anybody who's still not listening, spoilers are done, so you can continue watching the episode.
When it comes to shows like Invincible and it comes to shows like Bleach and stuff, obviously it's one of those things where like unlike actual like Marvel and DC comics where um there's different universes, different worlds, different narrative plots, different whatever. Invincible and Bleach, they have a start and an end, and it's usually linear. Sure, there's other like subplots that will branch off into their own thing, but they're never the main part of the of like the main series. A good example is like how in oh yeah, a good example would be like Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then all the shows that happens
Which apparently
like
Disney
around
announced like
it.
a bunch of like phases in this Comic-Con event. Like, I'm a little lost on that, but neither
I don't
do
really care for it. I stopped caring
I'm
about
not
it.
into
Obviously,
It's so ironic. As a nerd, I don't give a shit at all about about Marvel and all these like cinematic universes. It just doesn't do it for me at this point.
obviously this is trying to hit the that peak again of Spider-Man No Way Home and the Infinity Saga, because obviously those were like the big main things. But like when it comes to like these linear progression of like of Invincible and Bleach, like you'll have your own thing, but this is like it's linear, sure, but like there is this thing with fillers when it comes to these anime that don't exist in the manga, and that's why I always tell people just read the manga. The Naruto manga was straight up flames, fire. It's like an amazing thing. It's always a hitter. It's one chapter after another. It's amazing. The anime, which mind you, I first started watching the Naruto anime ever since it started showing up Toonami. Then I read the manga, and from the beginning to end, and it was such a different experience. And like sort of regret watching the anime because the anime is just like it's a different thing. It takes a lot of time. Heck, even One Piece does this. Whereas like, hey,
basically to describe it is you contract the manga's doing good. It's in the early stages or maybe the middle point at this point, or like, you know, further along than just a couple chapters, and then, you know, these studios will come up to the artists and be like, hey, we want to turn your manga into an anime, and the manga artist probably like, yeah, I could turn out an episode every other week, I could do this. But then eventually, as we know by Berserk, you know that sometimes art and artists can't work on a timeline like that, and then they kind of have to drag. And now you have the anime studio being like, well, shit, we have the rights and the license to keep making content off of this property. We got to keep making episodes. What are we going to do? Stop airing episodes? No, they're going to have to make filler for what they have. So, like, yes, I get where you're coming from. It's like, if you want a more streamlined, straight A to B plot, then yes, you would read the manga. But if you're like me and you prefer watching your action instead of reading it, you know, you kind of want to see it animated. But then you also run the risk of, like, how much of it is going to be fucking filler.
yeah, that's why when it comes to like fight scenes, I can just like I'm reading the manga, and manga does well when it comes to action scenes. But if I want to watch it animated, watch the anime, just the fight scenes, and that's it. Or if someone tells me, oh, the voice actor for this one moment is pretty sick, I was like, yeah, I'll watch that then. Like when a specific antagonist calls out Luffy's name in One Piece, like at the end of an episode, like that was like actual chills. Like it was pretty freaking good. A real deep voice. This voice actor was able to achieve at that moment. But when it comes to when it came to reading manga, it's just at least it doesn't feel like a waste of time for the most part, because you know every new chapter is going to be content related. It's going to have a lot of content. It's going to have a good amount of substance compared to just the anime where, like you said, you're running the risk of like, is it going to have filler? Am I going to waste my time? Heck, and the one thing that I don't like about anime, so a lot of animes do this, not all, but a good amount of them, is like, hey, episode 10 did this, right? Cool. I finished watching episode 10. Episode 10 was amazing. I can't wait to watch episode 11. All right, cool. What's episode 11? Well, it's going to take like 10 minutes for you to get new content on episode 11, because it's the opening, it's the recap, it's the not only just recap, but the recap is literally replaying the last 5 minutes of at the end of the episode 10, and everyone's like, okay, once these 10 minutes are done, you only really have another 10 minutes of new content. And that's just one thing I never liked about anime. That's just like constantly brings you back with the old content of the
And
previous
it could,
episodes.
some people
And
make
it
the
feels like a
argument that
waste
it's
of time.
like, if you go back from like the movies from the 30s and shit, where it's just like, if you watch like The Mummy and then Return of the Mummy, there's a good chunk of the beginning half of the movie where it's just a recap of the first movie. But that was in 1930. If Bill missed the movie last week and the cinema got the sequel, you just missed it. So to some people back then, they would have appreciated like, oh, good, a recap, so I can remember what happened, in the last movie. And we're looking at this as
Right.
like privileged people that are able to watch the shows at any time when we want, on any devices we have. It's kind of a privilege that we have all these streaming services that you can watch an episode what you want. But to me, that's what aggravates me the most. Where it's like, why is we live in the day and age where it's streaming all these episodes? Yes, I get it. They still air on television in Japan and certain channels here in America, but why do we need a recap? Like, we could just watch the previous episode.
Yeah, that's true. But it's mostly more of a an editor team or whatever, like someone higher up in the whole production of the anime, who says, "No, we're gonna do this." So the next, like, they chart out the entire show, where like this episode will have this, that episode will have that, and they go through a process of like, hey, how do we make this episode longer, shorter? Because we have either too much content or not enough content. It's the same thing with movies, where they have a whole lot of things and they just gotta edit out what needs to go, what doesn't need to go here and there. Which, speaking of streaming services, that Netflix is taking a big L when it comes to their stocks and coming to their retaining customers, which is funny. Netflix estimated, I think, that they were gonna lose 2 million. I'm sorry, 2 million clientele. But they only ended up losing 1 million, and they actually were happy because, given the projections that they were going with, a lot of people were struggling in the higher ups. They were like, "Dang, all this is happening, and we're gonna lose this many." And when the news came out about them only losing 1 million subscribers, they're like, "All right, cool. We're not in the hole as deep as we thought, so we're gonna push on forward." And a lot of people are just getting tired of this new Netflix move, I guess. Like, sure, they have a lot of content, but like, no one wants to pay extra money just because I lent you my account to watch one episode of one show. So that's something that I don't quite understand why Netflix would do so. Like, do this move unless they were really strapped for cash, or they were really, really, really trying to do something that I guess the competition wasn't trying to do. Like, they're just trying to get more money for everything, I guess. I don't know. But it seems like this move is not going very well, and a lot of people are going to other streaming services because they have special deals or they have special shows that you can't watch anywhere else.
I've never heard anybody just say, fuck Netflix, I'm going to go to HBO Max. Like, I've never heard that. Most people just say, oh, I'm going to get HBO Max with Netflix. I don't know. I don't know. To me, it's really weird for me that someone to tell me like, oh, they just don't have Netflix and they just don't. I don't know. It's just weird to me. That, to me, like I said, my Netflix account is paid by my cell phone provider, so I don't really put much thought into it. The only streaming service I actually pay for, which I should really take more advantage of because it's the most expensive one, is HBO Max. I mainly use it to watch like Robot Chicken and More World for like the 50th time, but yeah. So getting away from that kind of media though, I wanted to talk a little bit more about video games, Marco. So I've been kind of going through a bit of a nostalgic boom lately. I finally, I feel like I'm properly filling out my computer. I get it because it's a 69 episode, and I'm using Phil.
There you go.
Keeping with the theme. I've been setting up emulators again. I fucking love emulation. I think emulation's a super cool thing that, as much as companies like Nintendo like to bastardize and say it's just a form of piracy, I firmly am an advent disagreement with that. Listen, no company in the world is going to constantly work their ass off on trying to get all their games
Right.
into modern day systems and work as intended. There's just no way around it. That's why I think this is crazy to me, is that you have so many fans that are getting paid either by Patreon or they're doing it completely by free, that are doing this out of a labor of love to get so much work done to just keep these games active and being playable and even just improving on them. Like, a good example was I really wanted to play Majora's Mask lately. You know, Marcos, we were talking about like video content lately. One of my favorite styles of video content is iceberg videos. I love iceberg videos. They're such a simple formula, but they're super engaging. If you're even remotely interested in the subject matter, you can find out so many cool little bite-sized facts of a game that you might already know, or maybe something you might not even heard of before. You know, it's kind of interesting.
I keep getting recommended, but I never really
I mean, the
got
one
into
that
it
kind of
because of just
started it all, if I could safely say, is like the Genesis, like the progenitor, like, you know, the First Testament, this kind of thing. There was a YouTuber, I think his name was Ms. Kiff. Let me make sure I quote this guy's name. I keep saying Ms. Kiff, but I know that's a streamer.
yeah.
Iceberg. His name is Mishkaz. There we go. This guy, he basically started the iceberg video, and I don't know if I ever talked to you about like what our icebergs are or the history of it, but basically what it was is that this guy, he let me see what was like his video. All right, basically around the time, I want to say 2 years ago, there was like this weird fad that was going around that like Mario 64 was secretly like this really creepy game because it was like it was Nintendo's first 3D Mario game, and there's like a lot of imagery in Super Mario 64 that you never see again. Like that's what makes Super Mario 64 so interesting, is that it's the 3D Mario game when the 3D was still new and Nintendo was just putting whatever they thought was a good idea. Like there's so many characters that you never see again from Super Mario 64, but mainly there was like this weird like creepy pasta thing that was going around that like Super Mario, every copy of Super Mario 64 is personalized, or some AI, do not research the beta build from 95, you know, things like that. And there's also all this like secret shit that, you know, most speedrunners or maybe like super hardcore Mario 64 fans might have known, but you know, a lot of people might not know this sort of thing. And that was like kind of like intrigue and stuff like that. So he made this video called the Super Mario 64 iceberg, that, you know, if you guys know what the iceberg image is, if you're watching anything on YouTube, you've probably seen like 50 of them at this point. But basically an iceberg is that the tip of the iceberg is the most common, most well-known thing, and then the bottom is like the most obscure shit, right?
Yeah.
And you could do like an iceberg on anything. You could do one on Mario, Sly Cooper, Jack and Daxter, Pokemon, all these different things. And it's just so interesting that it's such a great way to get like an hour's worth of content, but you get little bite sizes of information that's just really entertaining. But going back to my point though, there was a video that a guy made where I'm pretty sure everybody has seen it recommended in their in the recommendation tab, called Narrow's video on the thoughts on the Majora's Mask 3DS remake, which is so funny because I remembered when the 3DS first came out, and we all remember when the 3DS came out, you only had like 3 good games at the time, and this thing was like what, 250. So
Basically,
you know,
yeah.
the only good games you had was like Street Fighter 4, which was broken as shit on the 3DS. Fucking oh my god, Blue Steel, was that called? I forgot. Was the fucking ship game. And then there was the Legend of Zelda 3DS remake, which was, in my opinion at the time, I thought it was the superior version to play the Legend of Zelda, because it ran at 30 FPS. The models were in line with the original N64 art style and stuff like that. But Nero made a video talking about the 3DS remake, because I never heard anybody ever talk about the Majora's Mask 3DS remake. All I heard about was people wanted one. People thought Nintendo was never going to do it because Nintendo could never do a Majora's Mask again. But the 3DS game came out, and I never heard anybody talk about it. Ever. Ever, ever. I never heard a single review about it. I never heard anybody recommend it. Maybe because it came out so late into the 3DS life cycle that I wasn't interested enough to give it a shot. And it's crazy because it even got a 3DS like special edition. And all I remember about the 3DS Majora's Mask game was the badass Skull Kid statue. That was it. That's the only thing I remembered about it. But that's about it. And so Nero made this video talking about how like Nintendo kind of flubbed up on the 3DS remake, where they tried to make it more simplistic, but I felt like it removed a lot of the charm, and more importantly removed all of the what's the word I want to use? All of the nuances of the game. You know, there was all this like kind of tech mentality, and there's all this like awkward, you know, overlooked design choices that was made. But he basically made a video talking about how like the 3DS remake kind of flopped compared to the N64 original. But he made a good point saying that the 3DS game isn't bad. It's just that it doesn't do a good enough of a remake job to feel like that's the version of the game you should play, like Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time on 3DS. Because I'm not gonna lie though, I still think Ocarina of Time on 3DS still is the better game, because it's just more convenient, it's portable, and I still think it looks pretty pretty well and keeping it in line with the original game. And this is like still, Marcos, like the highest rated game on Metacritic to this day. Like, if most people saying, if you're going by statistics alone, Ocarina of Time is still considered the best game of all time, according to according to Metacritic, going off on that. So
Yeah.
Neryl did, and leaning back to emulation, Neryl did this video where he wanted to update all the textures of Majora's Mask to have this like nice new modern look, but still keeping with the with the N64 design and everything without like drastically changing the feel of the game. And I've been playing through Majora's Mask this weekend, and it's been a blast. Like, I've really grown to appreciate this game more and more as I played it over the years. And that's kind of just been my weekend game lately. I'm actually going to look forward to playing that as soon as we're done recording for today. Because I'm definitely looking forward to it. And that's just what I'm saying, is that, like, you have Nintendo that does the bare minimum of releasing their N64 games, but doesn't really properly upscale it or do anything. Like, here's a good example, right? We had the 3D All-Stars game that came out, and while they did keep they upscaled Mario Galaxy and Mario Sunshine, they did nothing to Mario 64. They didn't improve the frame rate. They didn't like really make the game look any better. They didn't like even give it that like Mario 64 DS treatment that would have, in my opinion, felt like it would have been a much more better investment. But meanwhile, you got fans that somehow managed to reverse compile the ROM of the game and made a native PC port of it that runs at 60 FPS, that has all these mods and render options and all these different things. And I'm thinking, like, damn, like a bunch of fans did this on their own free time and gave you a much more better experience to play Mario 64 than what Nintendo offered.
Yeah. I mean, that's with the modding community as a whole when it comes to most games as well. That's not that far fetched.
I mean, that's just crazy to me, and that's why I love emulation. So I just been playing like a bunch of like nostalgia games, and sometimes I'm kind of in the camp that does this, where it's like I'll play the same game over and over again because like, oh, that's the only game I could play. But then when you kind of take some time out of your day and set up some emulators and shit and get your controllers up and running, like I just boot up an N64 game and then swap over to a Super Nintendo game just like that. And I'm thinking like, man, this is what I like playing about video games. That's how I feel about like with Majora's Mask. I'm not worried about some online bullshit or lag or anything like that. I'm just having me in the world of Termina and dealing with all the fun trauma that brings with it.
I've never quite understood the whole playing Majora's Mask lets up kids to have nightmares and stuff. I guess it's never been something that I've been something that I was resilient to, but it was nightmare fuel for some people.
I think it's just more of like just a surprise matter of like, yo, this game is like playing it straight. Like, this game is fucking depressing. I mean, I don't think like people,
Basically.
I'm not talking about like the Pokemon Lavender Town syndrome bullshit where it's just like, oh, kids who played the first initial release of Pokemon Red and Blue were having nightmares and there were seizures and shit like that because of bilingual audio.
That creepypasta that was
And I'm just
not really
like,
true.
This is a fucking Game Boy we're talking about, not some like complicated bullshit. Yes, Lavender Town is fucking creepy.
Yeah.
I think everybody agreed with that, but it's like, I don't know. But then again, to be fair though, it's not exactly far fetched, because have you heard about the Electric Soldier Polygon incident that happened in Japan?
I don't.
You don't recall? Oh, let me tell you, this is a fun little story. So back in the day, me and my stepbrother, we used to go on this website. I think any OG Pokemon fans remember, called Project Celebi. Where that's like the craziest shit for me. It's like finding like, wow, there was like banned episode of Pokemon where like James had titties and shit. Like, wow, this is fucking crazy. And there was an episode called Electric Soldier Polygon. To give you, I don't know the exact like. Yeah,
I remember
so
now.
for the audience who
Yeah,
don't
I
know what it
remember now.
is, and it's so crazy because even The Simpsons references it. There was an episode where Ash and Pikachu are like being chased by a giant Polygon, and Ash says, "Pikachu, use electric bolt," and it shocks Polygon. He like exploded or some shit. But there was like a flash of like red and blue, like it was like fucking fast, and it was like almost like crazy seizure inducing, and it was like pretty, even like me, as I'm not prone to getting seizures, but I was like kind of scared. I was like, man, this is like hurting my eyes, like holy shit. So that's like something that I think what happens is that like every little fib has like a little bit of grain of truth into it, that yes, Pokemon caused medical issues, but it wasn't the game, it was actually the anime that aired a really botched episode.
I haven't seen the whole warning label before a movie or a show about like about seizures and stuff. I haven't seen that in a while. When it comes to like this may cause seizures or whatever, which I would watch some episodes. I'm like, of a show or anything, like, and then just think, would this cause a seizure? I don't know.
I think what may have
Like,
been was also that they got rid of the sensor flashing, because that used to be really common back in my day, where it's just kind of surprising, like your screen would flash, and if you're watching this episode like super late in the dark, your entire bedroom would just light the fuck up because of that.
True. I guess that's why I would say something like that, because I would watch it in the dark. But all that being said, like, even in movies where obviously, you're in the dark, everything's, you're doing your thing, eating your popcorn, getting your hands all salty and cheesy with the nachos, even with all that, I don't understand, like, why there wouldn't be like a, hey, potential seizure warning here, because, well, there's a lot of flashing and stuff, or maybe they use ways to, like, go around it or make sure it's not possible to get a seizure. I don't know. All I know is that it's one of those things where, like, I've had friends and stuff who are induced, or who would be prone to seizures and stuff, and they'd watch some of these things where there's a lot of flashing, and I didn't quite understand why they could watch this and not have an episode. But
It's
I don't know how this
different
works.
for
I don't know how
everybody.
seizures
Some
work.
people it's more.
Obviously,
It's
yeah.
just that.
Yeah.
It's just different for everybody. But yeah, so I just been setting up like a bunch of emulators and just been reliving my childhood and just playing games that I really like a lot. But another thing that I played, Marcos, was that I went to our arcade. If you guys haven't heard, if you guys are in the South Florida area, mainly in the Miami area, I highly recommend you check out this cool ass arcade called Arcade Odyssey. It's a really cool place. This thing is gigantic. They keep adding new machines every other day, and it's like, it's also a bar too, so they also got like food and drink and shit. But I never drank or ate anything there. But I do like the fact that they name everything after anime and video games. Like they named the fucking Evangelion Angel a drink. I thought that was really funny. But one thing that I've been really into lately, Marcos, whenever I go to Arcade Odyssey or any arcade, you know me, I really don't go play the Street Fighters. I don't go play the fighters. I don't play like shooters that I could easily emulate. I like to play the really wacky shit that you can't properly get in the home environment. For example, rhythm games. I really loved going to play rhythm games. And while I was really sick with COVID, there was a great video by KK Clue where he talked about the history of like Beatmania. Now, if you don't know what Beatmania is, Marcos, you know DDR, right? Of course, you know DDR. Everybody who
Yeah, I know what
Okay.
Beatmania
So
is.
for those who don't know what Beatmania is, because to be fair, the Beatmania is not super popular here in America compared to like DDR. Beatmania is another branch of the Beatmania series. That's like the head branch of all of Konami's like music rhythm games. Like that's where they have Dancing Stage. That's where they have Drum Mania, Guitar Freaks, which is basically Guitar Hero before Activision just stole the shit out of that. And then there's Drum Mania, poppin' music. I think there's more.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, Beatmania was like the first. It was like the legit, the OG, the first one. And it was like this DJ rhythm game where you had like 7 keys and you had like a little turntable next to it, supposed to simulate like being a DJ. And I've heard of this game before. I think I've seen it even in AO and other arcades, but it never really drew to me because like I'm not really interested. Like what the fuck? Okay, it's a DJ controller, whoopity doo. But like that's nothing special. So I watched KK Clue's video of like the history of Beatmania and like all these different games and like how you could play them and like how there was like this limited run on the PlayStation and PlayStation 2. And I was like so fascinated. When I was like really sick with COVID, I told myself, man, when I recover, I'm gonna go to the arcade and fucking play this thing because this looks so fascinating. And of course, I played all the other,
Right.
rhythm games. Like my favorite rhythm games, if I could safely say that I like to play whenever I go to that, is Theatric Rhythm, which I think I'm pronouncing it right. But it's basically this Final Fantasy rhythm game that is like really fucking charming and it's really cute. I played the 3DS game back in the day through a demo, and honestly though, not gonna lie though, I would totally get a 3DS and just mod it just to play that game because that game is so charming to me. But the fucking arcade releases are crazy. They get all the Final Fantasy music, all the numbered Final Fantasy, even the 14. Dude, when they're playing like fucking 14 raid music on that machine, it is so much fun. But I'm getting off topic. Going back to Beatmania though. So they had the newer modern Beatmania machines. I think it's called 2DX, and I played it. And it's a little bit weird for me because it's like you have 7 keys, so you have like 4 keys, white keys, and 3 black keys, and you have a turntable. So
Yeah.
it's really weird to get
Yeah.
like in your mind. It's like, okay, where the buttons go? Because I've seen people go to fucking town how they play. Because Beatmania is super customizable. Like you could play without a turntable. You could play nothing but keys. You could have a key as a turntable. Da 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 da. It's pretty like customizable, but my thing is that I want to know is like whenever I play like an arcade rhythm game, I always think, okay, how can I get that exact same experience from home? And of course, like the easy answer is like, well, you can't unless you have two options. Like if someone were to say like, oh, what's the best DDR pad? Most people would say, well, a extremely expensive, super hard to get, you know, easily that needs to be repaired machine, or you just, you know, somehow manage to get like an old DDR Extreme machine that's still in good condition. And you know, if you're willing to put up with the cleaning and the maintenance and keeping the thing up and running and shit. And I just look at that and be like, okay, how do I play Beatmania at my house? And I look up like controllers and shit, and these things are like almost as much as like $200 to $300. But some people still say like, yeah, you get the comfort of playing at your home, but the best experience is still playing at an actual arcade machine with the actual speakers and the game built around it like that. But I just love playing rhythm games. I think rhythm games is such a nice way to get people who are into games and people who want to get into games into, because it's a simple concept. You push buttons when the music plays to, but it's one of those things where it's like it's super easy to pick up, but it's really hard to get really into. And yeah, I had a fucking blast yesterday at Arcade Odyssey playing Beatmania and a bunch of other like rhythm games. Like another one I played was called Groove Coaster. It's a pretty cool one. It's made by the guys who published this was by Taito, and it's you literally get these like two little fucking boosters where it's like these giant buttons that you could like they're knobs. You could like flick them and shit, and they have buttons on them. And it's such a simple design. You're literally like a little dot. If I could describe it as best, you're a dot following a line, and you have to hit the note with the boosters, and you have to like shake it, move it, and this like that. And it's such a simple design, but it's so addicting. And I really want to play that game, but I've heard that the PC version on Steam is like super abandonware, which is really weird because generally speaking, when people want to say like, oh, you play DDR on the PC, you don't play like an official DDR licensed by Konami game. You play like Stepmania, which is like an open source engine that lets you play DDR gameplay but at your house, you know. But Groove Coaster was actually released officially by Steam, but apparently it was like super abandoned and people told me to not even bother with it, so I should pick up the Switch version, but I don't know if I want to spend the $60 on it. But yeah, that's another game I really like a lot. Another one is called Sound Vortex. I think is also made by Konami, where it's like you have 5 buttons and you also have these knobs you have to like follow along with the trail, and they get that cool like DJ shit where it's like the sound goes wow wow like that, and it's so cool, super fucking fun.
I don't think that rhythm games uh, need to be a one of those games where it's like a niche type of thing, where like, hey, maybe I shouldn't play this because I'm not really into rhythm games. I don't feel like I should be put into that corner. Every time I think of rhythm games, to tell you the truth, I see it as a cardio activity because those things really get the
Yeah.
blood flowing, especially if you get it, if you're using a dance pad with the 4 directionals or even sometimes 8
There
direction
was a
arrows.
girl
Um,
that was on the Pump It Up machine. This girl had a sweatband, a fucking towel. She was going to fucking town. I was just like sitting there with my drink in my hand, like, this is amazing. Look at her go.
reap.
Oh, dude, it's crazy. I've always wanted to see like a pro, you know, get up on that DDR machine. I don't care if it's some fat guy who pushes glasses up in like triple XD fucking, you know, butterfly. That shit's cool. Or like when you're seeing like, have you ever seen Dancing Stage or no, that's European DDR. What was that Konami rhythm game that you see a lot right now? It's like the ones where people are dancing with the music. I think it's called Stardom. Let me see, Konami Stardom. Yeah.
All I'm saying is, and when I did play a bunch of Dance Dance Revolution Mario Mix, like when I was a kid, and when I had that for the GameCube, I did pick up a sweat. Playing that game, getting good, getting better. Especially when it came to the harder levels. Especially, what was this hard one? Well, definitely the final dance off with Bowser. That was very difficult. Another one was the one right before it, which one of the best songs prior to the it's one of the best songs in the games in my opinion, but like prior to the Bowser fight, you're on the ship going to the
Yeah.
Bowser fight, and gee, it's pretty freaking intense. That workout was when I was a kid, but like I feel like that'd be my only reason to pick up a DDR thing set or just a game, or even on the arcade. It's just to get the
Yeah,
blood
it
flowing.
really is a great cardio. Like the best example I could think of, because when I play rhythm games now, it's you know I usually just default to Stepmania, which is basically a DDR game engine that lets you play all the DDR. I downloaded every single DDR song that was original from the original DDR game to Ace, which I think is like the most current one. By the way, the game I was referring to is called Dance Rush, which is basically, I don't know if you've ever seen it, Marcos. It's like a stage where like you dance along and like the stage lights turn on and everything. So really, it looks complicated, but it's actually really simplistic. It's mostly just doing the Running Man a bunch of times. They had that machine in it, and that machine is always packed, and it's so crazy how it's such a simple game, but you know, it's just dancing. It's just like actually dancing, but people really go to fucking town with it.
Basically,
But
yeah.
they do have it, and all I could think was like, this is great and all, but there's no way in hell they're gonna figure out a way to import this thing, because you have to figure out a way how to make a touch sensitive dance pad that could accept, you know, people with shoes and all these other different forms of input. You know, with you know, Stepmania, you could play Stepmania with an actual dance pad if you're willing to invest into a decent one, or you know, you could always get the shitty soft pads from back in the day. I unfortunately didn't grew up. Okay, so I remember the only DDR game I ever owned in my lifetime. I did play Mario Mix. I don't know if it was a rental or something, but I know that my cousin had it, but he didn't own it. He just had it for a short time, and he somehow had a dance pad for it. But I do remember vividly. I still vividly remember this. This is when Dance Dance Revolution was still new to me. I think it was DDR Extreme on the PS2. I remember, or I think it was like 7th Mix. Let me see here. DDR 7th Mix PS2. But I didn't no, I think it might have been 6th Mix at that point, because no, yeah, it was DDR Max. Okay, it was DDR Max Revolution. I still vividly remember this. I went to Toys R Us. This is back when Toys R Us was still around. My mom took me one day on my birthday and just said, pick a game. And I went to the store and I was like, okay, I don't know what game to pick out. And I saw Dance Dance Revolution, and I was like, oh my God, this comes with a pad and everything. I bought that game. I played it for 2 days straight, and then my dog shit on the mat. That was the end of my experience of playing DDR on the pad. That was it. It just was completely fucked at that point, because you can't wash it. It's electronic, so if you wash it, like, you're already busted at that point. I'm like, well, that was fun. That was a great time. It was a great moment. But yeah, DDR, unfortunately, like a lot of rhythm games here in the States, just kind of died out. You know, like these games are coming out like every other year by Konami, because Konami just loves doing that. They like to just make a cool game, milk the shit out of it as much as we can, and especially in the arcades, man. Like, you'd be surprised. Like, you know, in America, we got like maybe 3 DDR machines in our lifetime. But if you go to Japan, and if we're counting every single release, like from 1st Mix to 7th, 8th, or Extreme or whatever, that's a completely new arcade machine having to be made every time. So that's why, like, if you go to any American arcade that has a DDR machine, it's most likely an illegally imported DDR Extreme that never came out here in America.
This is the iceberg of the Dance Dance Revolution, or the dancing games, or rhythm games, I should say.
I've watched a lot of like fucking retrospectives and reviews and like histories of DDR. It's just fascinating to me. It's just like, oh, okay. It's like, okay, so we're now in 4th Mix. Oh, now they released 5th Mix, and now they released 6th Mix. Okay, what's different between this? Well, this one had hold notes. I'm like, oh, wow. And then by that time, 7th Mix came out. I was like, holy shit, Konami. Damn.
Speaking about rhythm games, there is this game a friend of mine was playing, and he was showing me, called BPM.
Per minute, yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about, yeah.
And it was quite an interesting concept. And just recently, I think another game like it came out, where you attack and dodge at certain beats or whatever, and you're able to do more damage, evade damage, all that stuff. And
there's also
looks interesting.
The Necrodancer. That might be your kind of thing. I really want to play the Zelda one. That one's like so up my alley. I just haven't bought it yet.
I think that might be the one I'm talking about, where I've seen a lot of like gameplay of it, and it looks interesting. Or at least the trailer looks interesting. All in all that being said, it's one of those things where, like, someone like me who has struggles every now and then to keep rhythm when it comes to, like, if you were to tell me to keep rhythm for 10 minutes, that'd be something like kind of hard, or if anything impossible for me, because I would lose rhythm. My mind would just go blank for a second, and then it's just like, where was I? And then it'd be hard to continue going without some sort of cue or something. But if I'm playing the band, I don't need to keep the rhythm. The rhythm's kept for me, unless I'm the drummer, and then that's something different. But all in all, I do want to try out these like fitness games, like even the what was this thing on the Switch, the Fit Ring or the Fit whatever.
I was about to say Ring Fit Adventure. I recommend just holding out, waiting until it goes on sale. It goes on sale pretty often. It really is a workout though, but yeah, it's actually a really fun game.
Yeah, I've had a couple friends play it and they liked it. They liked the whole cardio thing, the whole whatever. But it's one of those things that Nintendo has a what do you call it? Has a track record of doing ever since the Wii with the Wii Pad and all that stuff. Where they it's like, hey, here's a fitness thing. I guess it's a way to sell the actual console, to people who
Well,
aren't
yeah, that's what
children
Nintendo was
or
really
people who
banking
have.
on at the time, you know, and that's actually a thing though. Going back to Nero for a minute, if I could quickly bring this up, I never knew about this, I never thought about it, but damn, it's one of those things you didn't really appreciate. He was bringing up the fact that like motion controls isn't actually like a bad thing. He argues that motion controls could have been actually a natural evolution to what gaming was, but so many people are so against it because Nintendo really banked on the casual market, and a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't want to stand up. It's so stressful and this and that." Which is, if you're a person of disability, I could totally get behind that argument. But I think to just outright say just because you don't like it doesn't mean anybody else should do it, then I'm sorry, that's a shit take. But what he did mention that it was a good idea, which was motion controls, was gyro aiming. And I never thought about that. I was like, wait a minute, gyro aiming. When I think about gyro aiming, I think about Nintendo Switch. And yeah, gyro aiming is pretty good for games like Splatoon and even Breath of the Wild. So then he brought up a good point that Valve just said, hey, with the Steam controller, they just allowed gyro aiming with your fucking DualShock 4. And while it is a bit of work to set up, it is something that people like. Because let's just be honest, though, guys. Console fans, come here and hear me out. Good. Aiming with an analog stick alone with no aim assist is not good. It is nowhere near as precise, obviously. So gyro aiming is kind of there to add a little bit of extra preciseness to it. So some people have figured out a way how to be like, oh, if I hold down the aim button, it suddenly turns into gyro aim mode, and it lets you aim the controller like as a like actually how you playing like Breath of the Wild or Splatoon. And I thought about this, like, wow, that actually makes a lot of sense. That's kind of a nice middle ground to get better precision because, while yes, I still prefer playing FPS games with the mouse and keyboard. There's a lot of games, like a good example was GTA. GTA does have a first person mode that makes it feel more like Far Cry, but GTA is a lot of driving, and driving with just a keyboard is nowhere near as good as playing it with an analog stick.
Yeah,
So,
definitely not.
I thought that's like, man, that's a good idea. And I think that that's like another reason why I like Valve hardware so much is like, even when Valve hardware fails, the legacy they leave behind adds something to the universe because, yes, the Steam controller flopped and it sold out, but it's still kind of an interesting relic because it introduced the idea of gyro aiming. It wasn't marketed, but it was a feature that the controller did had. And then when the controller died out, they just said, "Hey, fuck it. These new controllers by Nintendo and Sony, they have accelerometers on that shit. Fuck it, let's just put gyro aiming support on it, and then you could just set that up." I've seen people do it for Okami. I've seen people do it for Metal Gear Solid 5, and that's just kind of interesting to me. It's like, damn, in the ashes of some fuck up, it leads a legacy that people are willing to try something with it.
The one thing I will say when it comes to overall any rhythm game, it's sort of a practice for hand-eye coordination. That's one thing I did want to bring up. Did you ever have an issue playing Guitar Hero, hitting that orange button,
The
the
funny
fifth
thing you say
note?
that, like Guitar Hero and all these rhythm games are pretty simple. It's like, all right, this button hits that button, that button, that button. When I first got Guitar Hero, I've watched so many YouTube videos up to it at that point, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna ace this. This looks really easy. But I struggled. I fucking struggled like really, really fucking hard on easy mode at one point. But then eventually, you just have to take it, step by step. Just because you watch someone play the guitar, I know this is like, pretty out there, but just because you watch someone play the guitar doesn't mean that you could just pick it up and just be like, oh yeah. Because if you think about it, like, yes, playing guitar is pretty simple. You hold a fret down, you strum the key, and you strum the chord, and you're set. Like in the most basic bitch ass, like most fundamental level, that's how it is playing guitar. But just because you watch someone do that a bunch of times or you pretend to do it doesn't mean you know how to actually do it. It's a skill set. You have to get better at it. For me, as far as Guitar Hero goes, I went from easy to medium, skipped hard, and went straight to expert, and then I just played it off of that.
Basically, yeah.
My cousin never get past
That's what I did.
medium. Like that was it. He just couldn't do it.
It's one of those things where you have to learn, like, hey, touching that or getting that fifth note with using your four fingers is not that hard. You just gotta shift. It's sort of like a hand-eye type of thing. But yeah, I was interested in bringing, or not bringing, but like going into like something like Beat Saber or going back
Beat
into
Saber's
Guitar
hella
Hero for
fun.
the PC and how much
It's
mod
hella
support.
fun.
Yeah, I just get really sweaty, and that's
You
something
gotta
I'm
play
not
with a
interested
fan.
in.
That's just my only advice. Anytime you play anytime with a VR headset, especially for a super long time, and you start sweating. I literally bought a fan that's right here next to me, literally for that purpose. It's a small little fan. I have it connected to a smart plug and everything, but it's constantly blowing air straight to my face just to get anything in there. Because if not, I'm just gonna get that VR rim around my eyes, and it just looks ugly.
I've played with that. But I play with the fan and I still get hot. It's natural for me
Yeah,
just to
yeah.
get hot. It's something that, but it's I'm always hot. But even with a VR set, like I I need to take a lot of pause because I just be drenched in sweat
Yeah,
after a
it's
while.
gross, and especially if you got to like wash that shit because and if you're sharing it with people, it's even worse. So, you don't want to mix that kind of shit to your skin.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're done. We finally hit it. This episode definitely was it filled you up. I think that's the best way to describe it. This episode was definitely a filler of an episode. But we got it, man. We hit episode 69. We hit the funny number, but we still got a lot of episodes to go on. I seriously wonder how many episodes. Do you think? We'll hit the triple digits, no, for sure. Uh, I don't think
Hmm.
we're gonna hit it by this year. How many weeks are still left this year? Assuming we don't take any more breaks.
I'm pretty sure we're not gonna hit it by the end of this year. Maybe I don't.
Maybe not. All right, all right.
Yeah,
But
probably not.
yeah, we hit the funny episode, and it's crazy. We started this back in 2020, back when COVID hit, and it's we started this because we were bored and we had a lot of time in our hands because COVID hit and a lot of us were stuck at the house. And we're like, fuck it, let's just do something together. And now we're on episode 69. It's a shame that Kenny can't join us for this episode, but we'll wait for his return at some point, and then we'll retcon this
Hmm.
entire arc without Kenny as some sort of like dream filler episode, and then we'll just have to start back on episode 23.
Basically.
But with that, in the meantime, while we still figure that out, because the manga artist is still writing the next couple chapters for that episode, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up, guys. Thank you so much for watching and listening to the DKM podcast. We greatly appreciate you guys giving us a watch and listen. As you guys know, you can watch us on YouTube, listen to us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. If you haven't yet, feel free to join our Discord server. We would love to have you join our little community. And if you haven't yet, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our videos. We really appreciate that. Every like helps. And with that in mind, also, if you haven't yet, feel free to follow us on Twitter. That's the best way to keep up to date on what's going on with us and the boys here at the DKM podcast. Feel free to give us a follow there. All the links are in the description on any service you're watching this right now. I just want to say thank you very much for watching and listening. Take care, and until next time.